Lords and ladies, we now present to you the group known as HEMA, who are going to instruct all of us in the art of medieval combat. If you've ever wanted to learn what life was like to be a medieval soldier, well, now you have the chance to learn some of their fighting techniques from those who practice it often. HEMA.
So if I have a dagger in my hand, if I've got it in the ice pick grip, I can still block down like I did before, so I'm doing the same block, just now down here. Still works exactly the same. However, in general, when it comes to someone fighting you in the sword grip, you also want to be in the sword grip. The first and easiest thing I can do if he attacks me is just slice, grab, stab. Very easy. I can also just slice and run away. That's another great option. I can do it to either side, just slice, grab, and I can go wherever he is open. However, if I instead choose to block with it, in the sword grip, I'll be blocking like this. So, ice pick, my hands cross. Sword, my hands don't cross. He comes up from below, I'm going to block. I'm still posting out away from him because I want to keep my guts safe. But from here, I can grab hold of his arm and then attack, or I can do a wonderful disarm, which is I'm going to open my left hand, I'm going to push the pommel underneath both of our hands, turn it over, rip it out of his hand, and I end up with this characteristic scissor look. We also saw this during the longsword. So, let's do it again. So I'm here, block, under, rip. Whack. Otherwise, though, that's pretty much a good snapshot of dagger coming from high, high, low, straight down the middle. And there are a bunch of different dagger techniques, and some of them do change when you take into consideration armor. However, the majority of the dagger techniques from the Kunst des Fechtens are designed to be used in or out of armor. So, hopefully you've enjoyed that showcase, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of great questions on this one. Thank you, David, and thank you all. Hello! Now it's time to go over the armored portion of our programming. And for this, I've got two assistants who can't really have their helmets off for this part, so I'll introduce them. This one here is John. He was part of the Messer vid. Hi, John. And this one here is Randy, who was also part of our Rapier vid. All right, so the first weapon we're going to be going over is the axe. Now, this is often referred to as a pole axe. Sometimes you'll see they have hammer heads rather than axe blades. They're still referred to as just a pole axe. So the pole axe is the most versatile weapon you'll find on the medieval battlefield. It has pretty much every piece you could possibly want to mess someone up with. It's got an axe blade or sometimes a hammer head. Each of those can be turned into a hook. You have a maul or sometimes a spike. You've got a spike here on the top that's called the dog. You've got usually a spike on the bottom as well. And this whole thing can be used as a big lever to throw. Now, here you go, John. We're going to start off with nice and simple demonstration of how they can grip the axe and how they're going to use it. Now, the big thing about armor that you don't realize just looking at it is that it's made us a lot heavier. If we just throw ourselves forward, there's a lot more momentum than there normally is. So, these guys are going to be a little more reserved in their stepping than you would have seen in our unarmored portions. But, enough of me gabbing. So, you two go ahead, face each other. Alright. So, we're going to start off with a nice, easy approach in, and then John is going to deliver a strike to Randy's head. So as you can see, he puts his weight into it, he steps forward firmly, and he's striking with the maul, preferably onto the head. He doesn't want to strike too shallowly because that dog, the spike on the top, won't do enough damage. Now, go ahead and reset. Randy's going to go ahead and block. He's going to use the head of his own weapon to block this incoming strike, and then we'll see what happens. Go ahead. Now, at the moment, they're in a bind. We've seen this with the swords before. However, there's a new aspect of it that we haven't talked about. Because of the nature of their weapons, John can now hook, pull down, and then thrust into Randy. Go ahead. That's a big thing you got to consider when you bind with the axe heads, is that action can happen. Go ahead and do it again, gentlemen. Boom. And you notice that he's attacking into the openings. even though he can strike pretty much anywhere he wants with just the axe head, if he wants to use the point, he's going to have to thrust for gaps. So let's see Randy go ahead and defend himself in a little bit of a smarter way. This time, he's not only moving his body out of the way, he's also using the tail end of his axe to deflect. This leaves John open for a great hit from Randy. Boom. There's not a whole lot that John can do about it. So let's see that again. Now, if Randy wants to, instead of hitting him with the axe head, he could also stab him with the point at the end, or he could set up a throw. Let's see that throw setup. So as you can see, he gets nice and close to John and sort of weaves his body within John, so that way he knocks him off balance. Normally, throwing someone is decently difficult. However, since they're in armor, go ahead and do it again, guys, you're a lot more top-heavy. It doesn't require a lot of movement to get someone to fall over. Good. All right. Now let's go ahead and see what happens if Randy decides to deliver an almighty peasant strike down on John's head. Go ahead. Now John, as we know, he could use the tail end of the axe to defend, but Randy's really putting all of his juice into this. John can't just, deflect this. So he has to really raise his arms. And look, he's even getting tired. So, what's most likely going to happen is Randy's going to attack, John's going to block, Randy's going to rip it down, and then thrust at John. Go ahead. Boom. Well, that's not great. So what's going to happen now is that John is going to use Randy's momentum against him. So Randy's going to come down with a blow, John's going to move with it and strike him. You got to wait for him to pull. Do it again. Back up a little bit, you're too close. There you go. Go. Boom. Steps into it. Give me one more time. Boom. Excellent. So, those are just some bare-bone basic use of the axe. It gets way, way more complicated than that, but we're going to keep it simple because we want these guys to survive in the Alabama heat. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to spear. Now, spear and armor is particularly unique because obviously they're going to be standing further apart from each other thanks to their longer weapons, but the gaps they're going for are pretty small. Now, something I want to point out about both these guys' armor is that they're both using aventails. That's this bit of mail right here that comes off of the helmet. When it goes over the shoulder, it actually doubles up and makes it a little more protective. So even though none of us are currently wearing any pauldrons or spalders, which goes right here, this is still pretty safe. Another thing to consider is that this is plate, neck. So they're a lot safer than they look. But let's go ahead and show some basic spear action. So, the very first thing we're going to see is that they're both controlling the center line. Now, to get someone to attack you, you do have to move your point offline, which Randy will do. John takes that opening. There we go. Right into the gap. Let's see that again. Excellent. You notice that John is moving forward with small steps, but he is still hitting with quite a lot of force. Now let's see Randy parry. As you can see, he beats it aside, making a big opening, which he can then make use of. Go ahead. Oh. You also notice that Randy is couching. Why don't we hold on that couch, gentlemen? By couching it, he brings it up toward his body and locks it in place. That's exactly what we want. So that way, no matter what John does, moving that point out, he really has to kind of move backward away from it to get it out of his face. It's all a game of distance, really, with the arm. All right. Now let's see if Randy's going to take a low opening on John. So they both control the center line. John gives an opening, but Randy instead chivalrously stabs him down below the belt, as you do. Well, to parry this, John is going to have to drop his own spear point, so let's see what that looks like. He brings it across. There we go. When someone hits you below the belt, just hit them right back. Don't actually hit people below the belt. Now let's go ahead and see the other end of the spear be put into play. John is going to thrust at Randy. Randy's going to beat it aside. And John is going to use the other end of his spear to defend himself and then set up a throw. It's all just one big lever. I should point out that these guys are only doing this at about quarter speed. Real speed, we'd probably have a fall on our hands. There's a lot more that goes into fighting with the spear, obviously. It is sometimes referred to as the queen of weapons for a reason. However, like I said, Alabama heat. So let's move on to the sword, shall we? So now let's talk about the sword. Now, using the sword in armor is a little bit different than we used it out of armor. Obviously, no matter how strong I am, I cannot cut through their armor. That means that we're going to mostly focus on using the point. So let's go ahead and see. The first thing is we're going to start in a normal sword grip. We're going to attack, and then we're going to move in something called the half sword. So as Randy comes in with this attack, he's going to, as John sets aside, roll it over in his hand so he's shortened the weapon. This gives it a lot more control and also makes it easier to use in armor. It's all an up-close and personal game at this point. Let's go ahead and see that again. Good. Next, we'll see when John comes out with the half sword as well. So now things have changed. One of the most immediate targets that John can actually go for is the palm of the hand. There's not a lot of protection under there. It's just a glove. And if John is particularly good with his aim, and Randy leaves his arm dangling out there, he can just take it kind of whenever he wants. Boom. However, if Randy's a little smarter, he's going to be parrying and riposting, much like with the spear. Not a whole lot changes. He also couches. However, sometimes you need to get through the armor a little bit faster. And for this, Randy is going to show one of the often talked about techniques, which is the Mordschlag, or murder strike. So he's going to change the grip of his sword, and now use it a bit like an axe. Now, let's say that John tries to defend himself by raising his arms like before. We'll see something similar to an axe flag. He can just hook, pull down, strike. Boom. Now, that pommel hitting of John in the face may not look like much, but even in a helmet, getting just bopped square in the face hurts. So that was a bit of our armor showcase. Now, there's a lot more that goes into it, but we wanted to just cover the bare sort of basics, and I really hope you guys have enjoyed this. Alright, so now it's time to talk about the rapier. And for this, we got to go over the tools and the people that will be using it. So first and foremost, what is a rapier? A rapier is going to be a long, double-edged, predominantly used for thrusting, however they can still cut quite well, sword from the Renaissance. You will see some that are longer, you will see some that are shorter, you will see some with more complex hilts, you will see some with simpler hilts like mine. But the important things about the rapier is its pieces. It's got a long blade, out here is the weak, here is the strong. So the weak has the most speed, but the least leverage. The strong has the most leverage, but is slowest. So usually you're going to use the strong to parry, and the weak to attack. Now you'll notice that ours have these guys on the end. They're thrusting tips, they make it nice and safe to stab each other, mostly, if we're wearing gear. Now, the other thing that the rapier has is, in this complex hilt, we have what is called a ricasso, which is those rings right here. I can wrap either one finger, two finger, sometimes certain grips will even show almost 3 fingers using my thumb wrapped around it. There are many different grips that you can take. It's really kind of whatever is most comfortable, but it gives me that excellent point control, so that way I can very easily move the sword with just my wrist. Now, one of the common pairings that we will have is the dagger. Now, the daggers can look like a bunch of different things. It's really kind of whatever your side weapon was. Sometimes you will see parrying daggers that are specifically made for it. Some even have complex handguards here to protect the fist. Some look a little more simple like mine. You'll see them of various lengths. It kind of depends upon the user's personal preference. If you're helping me out today, I'm going to be Randy, who we saw in the armor portion, and then Jared, who we talked to before. And these two have been doing right here with me for quite a while now. And something nice that you'll see with both of them is that they're using slightly different hilts than I showed you. They have their own personal preferences, both with their parrying daggers and their rapier hilts. So keep a close eye on that. So let's get to the technique, shall we? So, what's going to happen here is that Jarrett is going to find Randy's sword and then execute a lunge with what is called a glide, where his sword stays in contact with Randy's and he hits. Let's see that again. Jarrett makes sure that after he hits, he recovers while still defending himself, so Randy cannot counterattack. Now what's going to happen is that Jarrett finds Randy's sword, and Randy is going to cavazione underneath and lunge, attacking the new opening. To deal with this, what Jarrett's going to do is, in the tempo of that cavazione coming in, he's going to counter thrust on the other side. Let's see that a couple of times. Good. That's acceptable. So now what's going to happen is that Jarrett is going to execute a lunge at Randy, who's going to go to parry. Rather than stopping and going around, he's going to keep the momentum of his lunge and just attack Randy on the lower target with a Mythical. Good. Again. Good. So now what's going to happen is that Jarrett is going to execute a feint, a jagged motion toward Randy's inside line to get him to move his sword, but this time he's going to cavazione fully under Randy's sword and pass forward with his back foot, gaining a large distance between him and his opponent. Good. Give me that a couple more times. It's okay if it's a little slow. Good. Okay, those are good. Alright, one more. So now what's going to happen is Jarrett is going to cavazione underneath, then he's going to pass forward with his back foot to grab hold of Randy's hilt and strike him. Now it's hand parry and girate. Big opening for Randy to take. Now as Randy lunges, Jarrett's going to move his hand across to parry and then execute his own lunge from HEMA. There's not much Randy can do about it. Let's see it a couple times. So now what's going to happen is Jarrett is going to open himself up wide, inviting attack once again. This time, however, rather than using his sword or his hand to parry, he's going to use his movement to parry by executing what's called a girate. Let's do it a couple more times. As the thrust comes in, Jarrett just steps to the side, allowing Randy's thrust to pass it where he was and keeping himself safe. Good. Good. So now we have rapier and dagger. Now, the nice thing about having a dagger is that it allows you to defend with one hand while you attack with the other. However, they are best used in conjunction, as we will see. So what's going to happen is, Randy has given Jarrett an invitation above his dagger. As Jarrett lunges, Randy's going to counter lunge and use his dagger and sword in conjunction. Let's see that a couple times. Good. Randy has given Jarrett an invitation giving a below the dagger opportunity. So Jarrett's going to be attacking toward Randy's ribs. You'll notice as they do it a couple more times, Randy doesn't have to lunge this time. Jarrett's kind of coming in super deep to his personal space, which allows Randy to just extend his arm and hit in the same tempo. Alright. On guard. Now Randy's going to shift over to give an invitation above the sword. So, what's going to happen now is that Jarrett's going to lunge for Randy's upper right opening, and he's going to use his dagger once again to defend. This time he will have to execute a small lunge. Go assume prima. This guy should look pretty familiar. Basically the same thing happens. Jarrett attacks into low, and Randy's going to bring his left hand across to defend and stab Jarrett in the face. Good. So now what's going to happen is that Jarrett is going to execute a cut downward onto Randy's head. Randy's going to use his sword and dagger together to form what is called a tuta caperta parry. It means crossing, basically, an X parry. He's then going to step forward, controlling Jarrett's sword, and stab him. Good. Let's see that a couple times. There it is. Give me one more. Excellent. Cool. That would be rapier and dagger. Now, the other common pairing was going to be your cloak, which you would be wearing pretty commonly. It's the older version of a jacket. Everyone would have a cloak. And what's nice about the cloak is that, again, you'd be wearing it in your daily life, but it can also double as something to defend yourself with. So, what I do is I take it here, into my fist on my left hand, and I just roll it over a couple times, which gives me this nice padded mitt. Now, it is still quite strong in regards to protection. If someone cuts directly onto my arm, it could break my arm, so you won't see me using it like a shield. However, with it draping down, it does take a lot of the force out of blows. So while I don't want to catch a cut directly here, I can catch a cut down here, as I will show you in a moment. The good thing about the cloak is it pretty much covers off one side of my body, making it so that if someone wants to hit me, they've got to go around this. So let's show the cut, shall we? I hold my arm extended, and even if Jared cuts it quite hard, it takes a lot of the force out of it. Now, his tip is ending up lined up with me, but if I were to hold it out here and he tries to cut my tip, he's not going to hit me. If he tries to hit me directly, that's going to hurt. Would I risk it in life or death? Yes, probably. But it's not preferred, and so the techniques reflect that you don't want to have it hit land directly. However, we do have accounts of people cheating in duels where they will wear a steel gauntlet underneath, so that way they can block with this without it being revealed to anyone else that they have that steel gauntlet.
So now we have the cloaks. The very first thing that's going to happen is Jared keeps his cloak low so that Randy attacks above it. He's going to raise his cloak to defend himself and counter thrust in between the cloak and Randy's sword. Let's see it a couple times. Forza. One more. Excellent. Right. Jared has raised his cloak, giving Randy the chance to attack below it. All Jared's going to do is bring his cloak down and across as he attacks back. Let's see it a couple more times. One more. Excellent. Good. Now what's going to happen is Randy's going to change up his tactics. Instead of attacking with cuts, Jared's going to step out, covering himself, and cut. Okay, on guard. So now what's happened is over the course of their bout, Jared has either purposely, or it's just happened, loosened his cloak. So now what he can do is he can cast it forward, and he's going to cast it not onto Randy's face, but instead onto Randy's sword, to weigh down the tip of his sword and give himself a clean opening. Let's see it a couple times.
Alright, now it's time for talking about the broadsword, or backsword. So, this is the basket-hilted weapon of most of Europe, but really it's kind of made famous by the Scottish Highlanders. So, what is a backsword versus a broadsword? So, a broadsword is going to have two edges, it is broad, and then a backsword like the one I'm using here has only one edge, and it has a little short edge, much like Messer does, and a thick spine, because this part wasn't being used all that much, so they just went ahead and did away with that back edge. So the things that characterize this sword as Scottish are the hilt design and also the way they used it. So not just the Scots would use this, people throughout the British Isles would, and later when the Scottish regiments got really absorbed into the British Army, you will see, non-Scottish people serving in Highland regiments using these. So the key points to determining whether a hilt is Scottish is it's got this sort of design to it. I don't really know what's best to describe this, but it's got these intricate patterns. Usually you'll have a nice either felt or wool covering underneath, and then you've got these guys. Now, the ones on my sword are quite pronounced. You will also see ones that are much smaller. A lot of people will mistakenly say that these are sword catchers and that they're supposed to trap an enemy's blade and you can snap it. No one is that strong. That's not what they do. What they actually are is they're just a reinforcement right here. Since that's right over my hand, I want to make sure that that's extra strong. So, in general though, when I put my hand into this sword, it locks in quite comfortably. I'm not hammer fisting this, but it locks in so that way my hand is very protected and I can stand in these more extended type guards more safely. So, now we'll show you two different styles of how this was used. And an important thing about when it comes to broadsword or Highland swordsmanship is pre-culloden or post-Culloden. So, little history lesson / flashback for those Highlander fans out there. A pre-Culloden is going to be before the last Jacobite rebellion failed. So this would have been the older style of fighting things, and it's even called the old style of broadsword. Post-Culloden meant that the Scots were reabsorbed into the British Army, and the only people that were allowed to carry swords in the Highlands were officers or soldiers of the army. So regimental style then took over, where some old tricks are kept, but it becomes a lot more simplistic and easy to just pass on to other people. Doesn't mean it's not viable, just means that it's now army strong. So, let's look at how it was used. So now let's look at some of the techniques. We're going to start with old style, and to help me out with that, I have Eric and I have Jeff. So, let's see what they can do, shall we? And we're going to start off with the first play. Let's see that again. Now let's move on to the second play, which is an evolution out of the first. So both fencers come forward now, standing in the inside guard. Again. Yeah, there we go. Go ahead, guard. Now we're going to see a timing attack. What's going to happen is, when Eric rears up, Jeff is going to fill the opportunity that Eric has presented to him and hit him in one tempo. Yes! Okay, so now we're going to see a disarm. This is specifically referenced as the Turkish disarm, because it's all cool and foreign, and it sounds interesting when you write it for your readers. So what's going to happen is, Jeff is going to deliver a one cut toward Eric's head. And Eric is going to close the distance and take away Jeff's sword. Excellent. Let's see that again. So as they move, what's happening is that as the cut is coming in, go ahead, stepping forward and taking hold of Jeff's arm, pulling it down to the ground, which exposes the back of Jeff's head. Now, if he wants to, he can also grab onto the blade and pluck it out of Jeff's hand. Okay, good. Excellent. That's the Turkish disarm. So now we're going to move forward in time into the regimental style. And for this, we've had Jeff go ahead and take a break, and now we've got Eric, and we have Andy. Now, really important thing about this style is that there are two very specific roles. In this case, we're going to have Andy here is going to be the antagonist, and then Eric is going to be the defender. Now, the weird part about this is that it's always going to be Eric that attacks first. This is because of the social conventions of the time. The antagonist is supposed to be the person who's teaching you, your senior officer, your social better, which means that for it to be okay for Eric here to attack him, he has to first be insulted. And so I'm sure you can come up with some clever things that Andy here might have said to poor Eric that would allow him to strike him. But that's where the names come from. Even though it doesn't make a lot of sense to our modern eyes as we read them, that's the way things were back in the day. So, let's go ahead and see some techniques. They start off in slope sword, as this is a military system, before coming on guard. Now they will use the first of Angelo's plays, which is a series of lessons designed to teach a new recruit how to fight with the sword. Begin. So, what did Eric learn as they go through it again? What Eric learned here as they go is to attack the head, defend the head, attack the leg, and be ready for them to slip and attack back at your head. Now, let's move on to Lesson 2. In Lesson 2, we shall see one piece being added. So what did Eric learn? As they go through it again. Once again, he attacks and defends the head, but this time he stays down, not recovering to the full slip as he did before, which allows him to launch a second, quicker attack at Andy's leg. So, let's move on to Lesson 3. Okay. As they go through it again, what's happening here is he still attacks the head, defends the head, and uses his feint, but now he's changing targets and attacking into Andy's flank. So, that is just one of 10 lessons, and you would see it continues to build upon itself teaching you new things. But something I want to draw special attention to before we part is the slip. This motion that they're doing as they back up. So go ahead and cut for his leg again. Every time that Andy parries, he withdraws his leg back, even if Eric attacks his head. This is to ensure that Eric can't be too clever and switch as he attacks the head. Let's go ahead and see that feint. Cut his leg. Feint. No matter what happens, Andy is always protected.
Lords and ladies, I know many of you have visited our fair autumn festival, but for those of you who might not, we wish to peel back the curtain and provide you a look inside the fair and show you just who we are doing what we do. To that end, we present this look at some of our volunteers, who are all volunteers of a group known as the Roundtable, who have been doing this for many years. You only need to have a love of the time period and a desire to share that love with others, to join the Roundtable and assist in putting on the fair and keeping it alive from year to year. So join us now as we meet some of our volunteers and what the Renaissance Fair means to me.
Hello, I'm Duke Richard the Protector, and wanted to speak a little bit about what the fair means to me. The Alabama Renaissance Fair is a fun time. I look forward to it every year. Originally, I started attending just as one of the public, and then later got involved with the fair, became a volunteer, and have been active ever since. It's a time where you get to see the people that you've made friends with over the years, but I like that no matter what you're interested in, whether it's art, literature, history, there's a niche for you in the fair. We have artists who come, but also art projects. We do programming that's focused on sort of educating in a fun way about the history of the Renaissance. We love the fair so much that my wife and I got married there, and again, we look forward to this every year.
I'm Duchess Darlene the Learned, and what the fair means to me is a place to be myself, a place to have fun, a place to know that there are lifetime friendships to be made, and you can learn, you can work, you can play, you can make connections that help you not only in volunteering for the Alabama Renaissance Faire, but that help you in your personal life and in your work. So I got to marry my knight in shining armor at the Alabama Renaissance Faire. I'm so glad that we're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Alabama Renaissance Faire has a new online store. Simply go to the Book of Faces and upon our page, click on the link to the store. We will also post that link to our Twitter at alrenfaire.org, to Instagram, al.renfaire, and our YouTube channel, Alabama Renaissance Faire. We have a plethora of items for sale and multiple designs for which to choose, and all at special Renaissance Fair prices. We have t-shirts in all styles, from that plain old classic t-shirt for $15, but we also offer it now as a comfort tee for a mere $18. Sizes go all the way to 4X. We also have t-shirts cut to women's sizes in classic and comfort styles, and all those shirts are available in multiple colors. This year, why not get your toddler a toddler size shirt, as well as other children's sizes we've had in the past. You can even order a onesie for your baby with the Alabama Renaissance Faire designs. And for the first time ever, you can purchase an A.L. Ren Fair pullover hoodie. Also in multiple colors and only $38. Of course, you can order that poster to add to your collection, but why not get the design on a coffee mug too? Posters are only $15 and mugs are $12. We also have an accessory pouch or zippered makeup bag for $15 for those who wish to travel with style. Now, if you're environmentally conscious and want an organic tote bag when you go shopping, we have you covered for only $20. Now, we do know that the ARF has gone virtual this year due to the plague covering our land. So you can purchase an ARF-themed cloth face mask for only $9. And for all of our friends from the United Kingdom and European Union, many of our items are also available for you to purchase too. These items will be shipped straight to you. Now, because 2020 is the first year for our virtual fair and for our online store, our items are for sale at introductory prices. Ordering during the virtual fair will let you take advantage of these special offers. The Alabama Renaissance Faire store is going to be on the Teespring website. This link is posted, as I say, on our Facebook page, blasted to Twitter and Instagram, and our YouTube channel. Please like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe to the Alabama Renaissance Faire channel.
Lords and ladies, I now bring to you John Sterling, as he gives us an inside look at some fascinating medieval history.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in today. My name is John Gibbons. Now, since I began this channel, I've covered a wide range of topics in medieval history. Richard III, Henry IV, William Shakespeare, and how William Shakespeare really screwed Richard III over in a very big way. We've also covered medieval relic sellers, the birth of the Renaissance, and indulgences, known by the uninformed as the get-out-of-jail-free card. Actually, it wasn't free, it was actually fairly expensive, but you get the idea. Anyway, we've covered these topics, and today we're going to cover a brand new subject. It's called death. Not deaf, where you can't hear, but death, where you can hear, speak, see, eat, breathe, walk, talk, or any number of things you can do when you're ambulatory. Except, you'll look good in a coffin, and that's only if you get a really skilled mortician. Otherwise, you look like Boris Karloff after he's woke up from a nap. But, again, different subject. But today, we are talking about death. In particular, the Black Death, Black Plague, bubonic plague, or the Great Pestilence. A disease which, according to some statistics, killed anywhere between 30 to 60% of the population. In some cases, entire villages were wiped out. In other cases, there were so many dead, there weren't enough living to bury them all. Now, this is a very grim topic. Now, I'm going to admit that before I chose to do this, I didn't know a great deal about it. In fact, my whole method of research previous to this was to watch videos on YouTube. And that's not really research. That's looking for a jumping off point to do real research. So again, with everything I've done here so far, I encourage you, look it up, read it. Use this as a way of getting a little more in your head to get started. But for today's video, I contacted a good friend of mine at the public library who actually has written a medieval dictionary, and he sent me the sections of his dictionary which cover this topic. We also have a pre-recorded guest who will tell us more about it. And again, we're not giving you the whole picture, we're giving you the basics. So use this as a means of learning more. So I encourage you to do that once you've watched this. Thank you, and I'll see you again later. Hello, my name is G. Reaper. from celestial reclamations. We pick you up when it's time to go, and up or down, we take you there. It's all the same to us. Now, I'm here today to talk to you about the Black Plague. Now, today they call it Yersinia pestis, but then they called it bubonic plague, Black Death, or the Great Pestilence. Whatever you call it, once you had it, it was. And one of my fellow representatives would become Colin. And in those years, between 1346 and 1353, I and my colleagues were very, very busy. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is the Black Plague? Well, I'm here to tell you a few things about it so that you can better understand it. And when it comes for you, you'll know exactly what it is. Of course, today they have things called antibiotics. They'll take it right out of your system. But back then, no, once you had it, it was all over. Now, just so you know, it begins with a flea. That's right, a little bitty flea. Hop, 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 hop. That is jumping off a rat. By the way, the rat got sick too. The flea jumped on you and passed on the sickness. Now, the symptoms were aches, pains, chills. Well, that sounds a little like the flu, doesn't it? But no, it wasn't the flu, because it also came with boils or buboes that came in under the armpit or in the groin and a lot of other embarrassing places, seeping out blood and pus and all other kinds of really disgusting stuff. Wow. So, there you have it. That is basically what it was. And of course, it killed you. Killed you, killed you, killed you. Can I sing that again? Killed you. Alright, I'm done with that. Now, where did it start? Well, it came to Europe from the city of Kaffa, which was under siege by Mongol raiders. Now, the people escaping the siege came to Sicily, and by the time the ships that got there, half the crew was either dead or already meeting their maker. Now, the people in Sicily said, get those ships away from here. Unfortunately, by that point, the fleas had already jumped ship and were passing the disease on to the people there. From there, we went on into Italy and straight on to the rest of Europe. And we were busy, because up to 60% of the population died from it. 60%. Up to 25 million or higher died during the plague. Oh, well, you know, even one of the kings of England lost a child to it. Oh, yes. So, no one was immune to what it could do to you. The city of Milan, they took a very active role in preventing its spread there. If someone had it, they locked them in their house and left them there till they died. Of course, they also locked them in there with their family, whether their family had it or not. And by the time it was all over, all the family was dead, and they weren't too happy with the first person that had it. Now, in the city of Florence in Italy, they took a very different approach. They pretended it wasn't there. By the time it was all over, dead were littering the streets. In fact, there were enough people to bury them. Whew. I never thought I'd get through that. I really did. You know how hard it was to get through all that? Whew. You know, it's hard to believe that we deaths can get depressed, but... Oh, well, never mind. You're not here to listen to me, Wayne. So, on into the rest of Europe. Of course, a feudal society like Europe at the time depended on a large number of peasants manning the fields. Well, the plague comes and there are a lot fewer peasants. But the ones who are left can actually charge more money for their work. In fact, they were even abandoning the lords they had worked for all their lives to move over to someone else who would give them more money. It got so bad in England that they actually passed laws that forbid peasants from demanding higher wages or leaving their current employment. And this caused a great deal of resentment, which led to the Peasants' Revolt in 1381. What a lifetime that was. Of course, eventually the plague burned itself out, and Europe was given a respite, but not before they had seen all the horrors of death and decay brought by the plague. Even one of the great Renaissance poet Boccaccio wrote a great work that showed the horror of the situation. Oh well, there's plenty more for you to learn, and I encourage you to go looking it up. Please don't use me as your best resource, because there are plenty more out there. Anyway, have a good day, keep well, keep safe, keep learning, and always remember, whether you're a king or a street sweeper, sooner or later, you'll dance with the reaper. There's lots of cures to help you if you've got the cash. During the plague years, there were dozens of cures, most of which didn't work, and the death toll continued to rise. There were a few sensible suggestions. By that point, it was a little too late. Well, our next segment is all about those cures. So without further ado from me, enjoy. Bring out your dead. Hello. Welcome to the Renaissance Rosary and Relics Apothecary. In these days of plague, you need all the help you can get from the great pestilence brought upon us by Satan. Now, there are some wonderful cures if you can afford them. We'll start with the least expensive, and we'll tell you why you should use them. For a start, let's talk about bleeding. You see, illness comes when the four humors that make up the body become out of balance. These are blood, phlegm, bile, and black bile. And when these go out of balance, you need to bleed out the bad humors. This is a tried and true method. Yes, the cemeteries are full of tried and true methods, but this one, we assure you, will work. Then, if that fails, let's talk about chicken bottoms. That's right. We take a chicken, we pluck it, and tie the chicken to the spots that are popping up all over your body to suck the bad humors out. It's a known scientific fact that it works. Of course, if it doesn't, since we know this illness comes from Satan, Lord, protect us from him! Since we know it comes from Satan, as does the serpent, we find a serpent, cut it up, and tie it to your spots, and it will drain the bad, evil humors away from your body. Of course, there are some other methods that are absolutely guaranteed to work. Let's first talk about unicorn horn. Yes, the magnificent unicorn which has graced our world, but so elusive. But if you find a unicorn and cut off its horn and mix it up with your food, you will get better. There are also less exotic cures. If you have a handful of emeralds, we can bash them up and mix those with your food, and you will get better. Or we can use arsenic or mercury. It's guaranteed to free you of the plague. Of course, it might also kill you, but you will be free of the plague. Now, there are a couple of cheaper cures. One is stand next to a sewer. Why, do you ask, will this work? Well, this sickness is also caused by bad, evil smells. And that bad, evil smell is now in you. You, and you will die! Unless you stand next to a sewer, which has an even greater putrid smell than you. And because of that, the bad smell that makes up your illness will be drawn from your body and enter the sewer. Isn't that wonderful and special? Of course, there's the opposite end. If you use a wonderful smelling herb held close to your mouth, it will fumigate your lungs and drive the smells away. These are some of the cures. There are some more drastic ones, of course. You take this dagger, and instead of bleeding yourself, heat it up and jab it into some of the boils on your body. And this will let the bad things out. Of course, there is one other method that will keep you from getting the plague. Stay away from other people who have it. That always works. Just stay away from them. And if you see they're sick, make them stay away in a locked house. You won't catch it that way if they're not near you. Of course. Well, those are just of a few cures that we here at Renaissance Rosary and Relics Apothecary can provide you to help you survive these dark, troubled days. Thank you for coming. The plague years between 1346 and 1353 was a grim period in European history. Millions died, charlatans made money, and the change to the social fabric was felt for decades, even centuries yet to come. Now, I've handled the Black Plague with a certain light-hearted touch, but it was a very serious point in our history. And as new pandemics have arisen, we continue to see the lessons that have been learned and should be learned from events like the Black Plague. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell notification so you know when something new is coming. Now, I thank you for watching. If you're watching this on my channel, I thank you. If you're watching this on the Alabama Renaissance Faire's YouTube channel, thank you again. The Alabama Renaissance Faire, although it will not be held this year, we continue to provide events and videos of this kind to take the place of the fair, at least for the time being. So, stay safe, stay home, and keep learning. And thank you. Bring out your dead! If you've ever watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail, you know the scene in which a man is going through a village with a death cart, calling out for plague victims so they can carry them away and bury them. It's actually pretty funny. A few years ago at the Renaissance Fair, we had a kid going around the fair with a wheelbarrow and a skeleton inside it, calling out, "Bring out your dead." I loved it. Anyway, if you watched my video on the plague, you saw me come out wearing this mask. Now, this was not a part of the Middle Ages. This was actually a couple hundred years later in the 1600s, during the outbreak that occurred then. So this was not in place with my time period, but it exemplifies that the continued belief of how this plague was spread. They didn't know what bacteria was, and from what I've read, no one identified the Black Plague bacteria until the late 1800s. So, you don't know what causes it, but you think it's caused by bad smell. So what do you do to protect yourself from bad smells? Well, you create a funnel, fill it with lavender, rose petals, anything that smells sweet. Does it work? No, of course not. But they believed it did. And because they believed that that was a way of preventing the plague, they came up with devices to help them stay safe as they went around treating patients. In effect, creating what is quite possibly the first medical hazmat suit ever. Did it work? No. But when you see doctors in full protective gear, they are following a tradition that began with things like this. It's a long tradition. Oh well. Anyway, I thank you for watching today. This hasn't been as long as some of the others, but I didn't have that much to say today. So I thank you for tuning in and giving me a few minutes of your time. Now, if you've liked what you've seen, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Hit the bell notification so you know when something new is coming. I do have at least 2 or 3 more things in mind, and I'm sure I'll have a few more things in mind after that. Also, remind you that the Alabama Renaissance Faire will not be held this year, but we will be holding a virtual fair. So go over to the YouTube channel for the Alabama Renaissance Faire, subscribe to that, because there's going to be some great things coming your way. As always, stay home, stay safe, and keep learning. Bring out your dead!